Hello, everyone. In this video, we are going to discuss consumer perception, emotions, and consumer memory. All of these are crucial for how marketers strategize their market offerings and how they are received by consumers. Perception is how people interpret information to make sense of the world around them. So, different consumers can perceive the same information in very different ways. There are three key perceptual processes that are important in marketing. The first one is selective attention, and this refers to the process by which consumers filter the vast amount of information they are exposed to on a daily basis. Now, since consumers are exposed to thousands of marketing messages every day, they cannot consciously and possibly even process all of them. Instead, the mind selectively pays attention to stimuli that are most relevant to it. For marketers, the challenge lies in breaking through the quote unquote clutter and capturing the attention of consumers. Selective attention is influenced by factors such as relevance, novelty, and the consumer's current needs. So, if a consumer is hungry, they're more likely to notice advertisements for food. Also, stimuli that are unusual or unexpected are more likely to capture attention because of their unusualness. For example, an ad that uses humor or bold visuals or a surprise twist can attract more attention than a conventional one. For example, Nike's Just Do It campaign grabs attention by combining high energy visuals with emotionally charged narratives that connect with athletes' desire for achievement. The next kind of perception that is of concern to marketers is selective distortion. And this occurs when consumers interpret information in a way that supports their current beliefs and attitudes. Even if a message is clear and straightforward, consumers may distort or alter its meaning to align it with their preconceived ideas or beliefs. Now, this can be a major hurdle for marketers trying to change negative perceptions of their brands or their products. Selective distortion is especially common when consumers have strong brand loyalty. So, for example, a loyal user of a particular brand might interpret any advertisement from the competitor in a negative light, regardless of the actual benefits or advantages of the product of the competitor. And conversely, they may overlook flaws in the product or the brand that they are loyal to because of their emotional attachment to the company. Last is selective retention, and this refers to the tendency of consumers to remember information that supports their beliefs and forget information that contradicts them. This is particularly important in marketing because even if a consumer is exposed to a marketing message, if it does not align with their beliefs, they may not retain the information. For example, a consumer who believes that organic food is healthier might forget negative information about the safety of organic products, but keep information that supports their preference for organic food. Similarly, consumers who have a positive view of a brand are more likely to remember the favorable information or points about it and forget the negative reviews or criticisms because they're loyal to the company and they're happy with the product that they've purchased. Marketers counter selective retention by using repetition, consistent messaging, and strong emotional appeals to ensure their message is remembered from the quote unquote clutter. Now, creating memorable taglines, jingles, or visually distinctive ads can also help improve the likelihood that consumers will retain the desired information. And that is why, for example, whenever we have an election here in the Philippines, it's very common to hear the jingles of various politicians just blaring through the streets of our city, because that's how you can easily remember the politician's name. And hopefully that will work in their favor during election time or during the actual time that the person is voting. Now let's move on to subliminal perception. And this involves the processing of information by consumers without them being consciously aware of it. Subliminal messages are designed to influence consumers below the level of conscious awareness. Though the idea of subliminal advertising has been the subject of a lot of debate and skepticism, some marketers attempt to use subtle cues to influence perceptions. Now, in practice, subliminal perception often involves embedding messages or imagery in advertisements that consumers might not consciously recognize, but it definitely affects their attitudes or behaviors. For example, a fast food ad might subtly include images of happy families enjoying their meal. And this helps reinforce the idea that the product is associated with positive family experiences, even though this message is not explicitly stated in the ad. Another example would be companies who use different or certain colors in their promotional materials. So companies can use the color red to stimulate appetite, and that is commonly found in food advertising, or music, such as upbeat tunes, to create a positive mood. And this helps influence the consumer's subconscious mind in favor of the products without really overtly stating the intended effect. Now let's move on to emotions. And these are significant contributors to consumer behavior. They often drive decisions more than logical reasoning, even. While rational factors like price or features can be important, definitely, to the consumer, emotional responses often dictate the final decision, as in, what kind of emotion does the consumer have towards the product or the brand? How do they feel about them? Emotions can determine how consumers perceive a brand, how loyal they become, and how much they are willing to pay for a product. The role of positive emotions like happiness, joy, and love is that it creates favorable associations with a brand, and it makes consumers more likely to actually remember and purchase a product because it arises very positive or very favorable emotions. Now, these emotional connections, they make for long-term brand loyalty as consumers seek to relive the positive experiences tied to the brand with every purchase of it. Then we also have negative emotions, of course, such as fear, anxiety, or guilt. And they can also be leveraged, by the way, in marketing to prompt action. So it's not always bad to have negative emotions associated with a particular campaign, right? Because this can be used by marketers. So these emotions are often used, for example, in public health campaigns or insurance marketing, where they use negative emotions to create a sense of urgency or fear in order to move customers towards the purchase of the product in order to prevent a certain catastrophe or a certain negative situation from happening and basically protect their well being. And finally, we have memory, and this is a complex process that involves encoding, storing, and retrieving. Now, these stages are essential in how consumers reprocess and recall information about brands and products, and so it is important for marketers to understand what these are and how they work. Encoding refers to the way information is processed and translated into a form that can be stated in memory. Sorry, that can be stored in memory, rather. For marketers, this means ensuring that brand information is presented in a way that captures consumers' attention and is likely to be remembered by the customer. Now, factors such as repetition, attention, and emotional engagement, all of these can help enhance the coding process. Next, we have repetition, and this can be enhanced by providing consistent exposure to a brand or message to increase the likelihood that it will be encoded or truly etched into memory. Then we have attention and focus, and this is when a consumer is more focused on a stimulus. The information is more likely to be encoded for later retrieval. Marketing that uses attention grabbing visuals or emotional content increases the chances of deeper encoding. Once encoding has been completed, storing now takes place, and storage here refers to how information is retained over time. In consumer behavior, it is critical that marketing messages are stored in long term memory, where they can be retrieved during the purchase decision making process. There are two kinds of memories here. We have the short term memory or the STM, and this has a limited capacity and it holds information briefly only. If the information is not meaningful or repeated, it will likely be forgotten. And the other kind of memory is long term memory or LTM. Now, this has a much larger capacity and it can store information for longer periods of time. And marketers aim to create memorable experiences and emotional connections that help customers store this information in their long-term memory. And finally, we have retrieval, which is the process by which information is stored and is recalled when needed. Now, marketers want consumers to be able to recall the brand at the right moment, whether through brand recall, as in remembering the brand without prompts, or brand recognition, as in identifying the brand when consumers are shown visual cues. So, recall involves retrieving a brand from memory without any external help. So, it's like the top of the mind memory. And so example of this would be like remembering a brand name when thinking of a particular product category. So if we ask for the product category of milk and we ask consumers what is the first thing that they remember and they say Nido, then obviously Nido has done a good job at being the top of the mind brand, and so it is quite easy for the customers to recall and be able to purchase the product during the actual situation of buying. And then we have recognition. And this one occurs when consumers can identify a brand based on a prompt, such as when they see a logo or product design. And that triggers the stored information in the consumer's memory.